I'm here on behalf of Mary Beth Hrin, H-R-I-N, to tell you about the lawsuit that was filed today in connection with two, that we know of, false informational flyers relating to the mayor of Prescott election. And I'd like to start out by going through what we have in a press release, and we're going to have an opportunity for anyone who wants to speak. But I want to take you through this very informally and without too much legalism as to what the lawsuit is about. It starts with a couple of mailings that were done, the most recent of which we don't have an actual date for, but it makes statements based upon a flyer. The flyer makes statements saying that, I'm going to show this to you for us getting news, that Mary Beth Hrin fleeced Arizona taxpayers. Here's proof. So obviously it's a false statement, and let's take a look at their proof. Mary Beth Hrin claims to be a voice of the people. We think that's true. But the truth is she stiffed Arizona taxpayers for more than $15,000. That's false. It goes on to say no to politicians who take advantage of Prescott taxpayers. Say no to Mary Beth Hrin. And if you look at the bottom, it's not very large, but it says paid for by the Arizona Voter Education Project, not authorized by any candidate or candidate's campaign committee, and then a phone number. That phone number, 602-222-4700, is the phone number for an entity known as Integrated Web Strategies. It is owned and operated by a man named Max Foss, F-O-S-E. Max Foss is a man who's involved in the political scene. He is also the executive director, in addition to being the president and CEO of Integrated Web Strategies. He is the executive director of an entity called the Arizona Voter Education Project, Inc. It's an Arizona corporation. If you look at your packet, you will see that the Arizona, look at the last page of the press release attachment. You'll see that over 2 years ago, the Arizona Voter Education Project was revoked by the Internal Revenue Service as to its nonprofit status. So although it claims on its website to be a nonprofit, we would suggest not so much. Going back to what we call the first mailing, what I call the defamatory flyer ad number 1. It says, Mary Beth Hrin fleeced Arizona taxpayers. That indicates that she did something dishonest to take advantage of taxpayers. But this document that is attached to our complaint as exhibit number 2 is a lien document recorded as the law allows by Access, the Arizona Health Care Cost Containment System, which, by the way, is a part of a federal Medicaid program that allows state governments to opt out and do it their own way, but it's still funded with federal Medicaid dollars. And Access is required to file liens like these where there's any possibility of getting reimbursement for medical expenses when someone is injured in an accident or incident where someone else is responsible and is required to pay some kind of a settlement or recovery to the injured person. If that were to happen and Access is paid for the medical bills, Access has a right to recovery pursuant to these access liens. And customarily, Access puts in an amount of $15,000 when they don't know the amount. The reason for that is that $15,000 is the minimum amount required under Arizona's law for auto liability insurance. In this case, Access didn't know the amount, but they also didn't know who the adverse party was. That part is left blank. But the significant part here, in connection with this flyer, you see on this, in this flyer on the second page, I call the first page the page where the address to the recipient is indicated. On the second page, on the right-hand side, they have a very partial copy of just the first page of the access lien. If you were to take a look at our complaint, those of you that have the complaint, you will see that we have as Exhibit 2 the entire two-page recorded access lien. And you will see that in this recorded lien, I have highlighted what we consider the information that you need to know about the most, where it says on the second page, Access does hereby claim a lien upon any and all causes of actions, suits, claims, counterclaims, or demands for damages accruing to the patient named herein, blah, 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 on account of injuries giving rise to such causes of action and which necessitated that the patient's charges for hospital care and or medical care and treatment. So basically what it really says is Access wants the third party that they refer to as the adverse party to pay and Access out of whatever recovery the injured party gets. And it's a requirement of law that they do so. But there was no adverse party here. And this is a 12-year-old, a 2012, I'm sorry, it's a 5-year-old 2012 lien. Interestingly, if you look at the press release, next to the last page is an attachment, I believe, and that attachment indicates that Access has released this lien because the lien was just a shot in the dark to start with, and it's 5 years old, and they're never going to get paid. And anyone who knows about liens would know that to be the case, that a 5-year-old lien was dead years ago. And in that regard, I just want to mention, I'll do a little commercial if I may. I was the editor-in-chief of this publication, Arizona Personal Injury Lien Law and Practice, which is still being sold. I wrote 5 of the 12 chapters. I did not write the Access chapter, but I edited it. But the point being, I'm familiar with, and Sean Phelan, my partner, is very familiar with liens. He also assisted in creating this book. We know about liens, and anybody who knows about liens knows that this is a lie. For this flyer to say that Mary Beth Hrin fleeced or scammed, stiffed, excuse me. The two really offensive words here is on the first page of the first flyer, fleeced Arizona taxpayers. The second page, where it says Mary Beth Hrin stiffed Arizona taxpayers for more than $15,000. Clearly, they were intentionally making false statements and intending that those false statements would influence voters in the election. And I say that because they, at the bottom of this second page, say no to politicians who take advantage of Prescott taxpayers. Say no to Mary Beth Hrin. I suggest that that's directly aimed at the mayoral election that is being campaigned for right now. Going further with this analysis, there's a second mailing that we just got wind of this yesterday, and I want to thank David Stringer, our Arizona representative, for responding to my request for a copy of it by getting it to us in time that we could include it in this lawsuit.
Good.
The second mailing kind of, I would call it, piles on to the first one. Let me get a copy of that out. Here we go. The second mailing states, Prescott voter alert, first page of the mailing. Mary Beth Hrin, the first X says, fleecing Arizona taxpayers. The next one, fake address. The third one, phantom cars. It states, Mary Beth Hrin has already been exposed for fleecing Arizona taxpayers of thousands of dollars. Now there's more scandal. And the scandals are, one, about a fake address, and number two, about phantom cars. This quotes out of context and impartially from a 2006 memorandum opinion of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania U.S. District Court. Well, who's the guy who used to say, now I'll tell you the rest of the story? I'll tell you the rest of the story now about that. It's Exhibit 4 to our complaint. And I've taken the liberty of just supplying the pertinent portions of this memorandum opinion. But what they did is they quoted a very limited part of the first sentence in this memorandum decision and omitted the next 11 pages. And what this was a declaratory judgment action by which Allstate Insurance Company sued Mary Beth Hrin to establish a declaration from the court that she was not entitled to insurance coverage under the Allstate automobile policy of insurance, in which she was listed as a driver, designated driver, but as to which they were disputing whether she could get coverage for a bad accident she had on a bicycle when a car came up behind her, struck her, she went flying, and after the accident, which had an eyewitness, so there's no question whether it had happened, she couldn't identify the license plate on the vehicle because she was flying through the air and crashing to the ground. So she makes her claim to Allstate under the underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage, which is what you do with hit and run cases when you cannot identify the other vehicle and the other driver. And these unidentified hit and run drivers are called by lawyers who do this kind of work phantom cars and phantom drivers, because you cannot identify them. They're not made up and they're not ghosts. They're hit and run drivers who are not identified. So in this case, they quoted the part, the jury determined that Mary B. Hrin did not reside at the named insured's residence. That's all they say at 11 pages. Once again, the rest of the story is pretty important. Essentially, Mary Beth Hrin was separated from her husband. She left many of her belongings in that residence. She took up residence in an apartment a couple of blocks away. She was regularly at that residence especially when her husband was out of town. But Allstate wanted to make a lawsuit out of it, and they fought it, and they won on that point. But Mary Beth Hrin won the lawsuit. She won coverage because she was a designated driver, because she was in the policy, because the policy was purchased from an Allstate agent to replace a traveler's insurance policy in which she wasn't insured, and their Allstate insurance agent screwed it up and didn't do it right, so there was that loophole for Allstate to use, which it used as aggressively as it could in going to a jury trial, in Pennsylvania, but she won the case. Oh yeah, that would have been nice to mention in the flyer. So, Mary Beth Hrin has not fleeced Arizona taxpayers. She did not stiff anybody, including Arizona taxpayers, for $15,000. And you should not say no to Mary Beth Hrin in this election because of anything in these two false defamatory flyers. We don't know how long it's going to take to get to the truth of who is behind this. This is what's called a dark money attack on a candidate. They will not make it easy for us in finding out whose money is behind this. But we intend to find out. As Mary Beth has said in her press release, she intends to find out. And at this stage, I'm going to ask Mary Beth to just very, very shortly give your message to the voters.
There's a lot of money being spent against me. I've done these mailers. It's an awful lot of money, probably over 15,000. So why would they spend so much money to target me? And why are they using so much secrecy? Why don't they just put their name on the bottom of it? And who having any connection to this elections in the mayor's candidacy really stands to profit from this? And why are they undermining my candidacy? And that's the reason we're filing this lawsuit, is really to get to the truth with all this. I really would like to find this out, and I think the voters would like to find this out.
Thank you. Are there any questions about the lawsuit? Oh, well, I don't know if I have mentioned that the lien is now released, that they claim created a debt on the part of Mary Beth Hrin that should fully and finally be the last nail in that coffin. It was an empty lien. It had no adverse parties, so it was never anything more than a piece of paper that comes off of a computer template, and they record it in every case that they can. It means very little, and in this case, nothing, and that's why it was released. The questions we have right now relate to Max Foss. He is being sued individually. He's being sued as the president and CEO of Integrated Web Solutions, and it appears on another part of that website that he's the owner. He's being sued in connection with the Arizona voter education program, which is a corporation that he is statutory agent for and that he incorporated. And we're suing Max Foss LLC, so that's 3 different corporate type entities plus the individual. But he didn't pay the money to influence the Prescott mayoral election. Somebody in Prescott did that.
Yes.
And we're not accusing anyone today. We don't know who it is. We're going to find out, and we'll go public with it as soon as we can.
How important is that to your lawsuit, finding out that who's behind?
It's not very important to the defendants, but it's very important to us. Dark money doesn't work, and somebody like Mr. Foss would have, I believe, less customers for dark money flyers like this if he couldn't keep the identity of the money source secret.
You mentioned that it won't be easy to find out, but you intend to. How do you intend to do that?
Well, That's why they have lawsuits. We're going to ask for it, and I expect they're going to have lots of objections. There is something, in fact, I'm going to ask Sean Phelan to talk about the first line of defense that we expect in connection with us seeking the list of people who donate to the quote nonprofit, but not really, Arizona Voter Education Project.
Very briefly, I think that Arizona Voter Education Project was a 501c4 corporation that's lost, it's had its status revoked by the IRS. When you hear of these donor lists being secretive or not available to the public, this is not a lawsuit by the public. This is a lawsuit by Mary Beth Hrin to find out who essentially and why she's been attacked falsely and defamatorily by individuals. And the money that will be discovered is not the public seeking a donor list. This is discovery within the confines of litigation. And we think that very much so, the discovery of where this money came from and what led to the production of these flyers is discoverable as part of the defamatory action, the defamation action, the false light action, as well as the intentional infliction of emotional distress. So we're not in the public requesting a donor list. We're very much somebody who's been harmed by very specific actions by very specific people.
So to add to that, the complaint lists John Doe's and Jane Doe's and XYZ corporations and all that stuff. One of them, we think, paid for these black money marketing techniques that are full of lies in order to influence the election. I can't see why anybody in Phoenix would care about who gets elected in Prescott for mayor.
Yeah.
We believe it's local money, and we'll put a name to that John Doe or Jane Doe if we can, and we think we can.
Does this challenge the case law behind the whole black money?
I'll be honest, no. The United States Supreme Court has said black money is legal, and this cannot challenge that. But this is a different situation in that they've targeted a candidate for a local election by making false and defamatory statements intentionally to harm her candidacy and to attack her character. Our lawsuit gives Mary Beth Hrin the individual claims against the defendants for the things we're suing for that are listed in the complaint. Defamation, what's called false light, where you invade somebody's privacy by making public statements that imply or state that this person has bad character, bad honesty, and all that sorts of things. It's just like it's done here. And you cannot just do that to anybody. You can do that to a public official as to the public official's acts in office. But Mary Beth Hrin is not a public official until she gets elected. And she has committed no acts in office because she holds no office. So we're entitled to make a claim there. And we also have a very similar case. It's basically proving the same things for intentional infliction of emotional distress. The fourth count that we are suing under requests the court to make a declaration that the statements made against Mary Beth Hrin are false claims, easily proven, we expect.
What kind of damages are you seeking, and do you expect that there's any chance that this will be wrapped up by the election?
I won't speculate about that. There has been settlement negotiations, but I don't expect it to settle before the election. And to your question, it's better answered after the election. I'm sure you'll appreciate it. The damages will be related to the outcome of the election. David Stringer, can you tell us?
Well, I I'm willing to make a couple of comments here, but I did have a question, Chris. Is one of the tools that you might use to discover the identity of the people who funded this flyer, would that be through deposition of Mr. Foss and his
Absolutely,
associates?
that's really what we want to do, is depose Mr. Foss and depose what's called a Rule 30B6 representative of each of the two organizations that we're also suing. Actually, there's 3 of them, and we think Max Foss is going to be that person for each of these 4 sets of defendants.
And just for clarity, for folks who don't understand, a deposition is taken under court order typically.
Yes.
And with an oath to tell the truth.
Absolutely.
So this is a testimony under oath, taken privately in a deposition, but under the authority of the court. It is compelled testimony.
And if the testimony were to be proven to be false at trial, you can use that false testimony to impeach the witness.
Right.
So there's a downside to lying in a deposition.
Chris, I just wanted to make one, go ahead, I just wanted to make one.
I'm just going to ask if you have any depositions scheduled at this point.
Oh, no, but, we filed our lawsuit today.
Okay,
You can't, not that quick.
okay.
You want to say something?
Chris, thank you very much. My name is David Stringer. I'm a state representative for LD1, which includes the city of Prescott. I'm here today not just as a friend and supporter of Mary Beth Hrin. I am here today as an elected official because I have a responsibility to the citizens of Prescott to protect them from what I perceive to be voter fraud. There has been a fraud perpetrated on the citizens of Prescott. Many of you know that I am an attorney. I have made known to the Jensen Law Firm that I am admitted in Arizona. I do have considerable trial experience, and I am making my services available on a pro bono basis to the Jensen Law Firm to be of assistance in any way possible. The purpose of this lawsuit is to vindicate the honor and the integrity and the character of Mary Beth Hrin, but it is also to serve another purpose, and that is to serve the purpose of truth and honesty in campaigning. So one of my reasons for joining this law firm, joining this lawsuit, is to help unmask the perpetrators of this hoax, this false and deceptive flyer, and to run them to ground. And that's what I intend to do. I have many years of experience as a trial attorney and a criminal trial attorney. I know how to investigate cases, and I will make my services available to the Jensen Law Firm in any way they deem appropriate. Thank you very much.
David, may I ask a question? Chris, do you think this will stop any future attack ad from coming out like this?
I appreciate that question so much because I was coming up here before then to tell you about the fact that we filed today a request for a temporary restraining order from now to the election to prevent any further repeats of these false, slanderous, defamatory, injurious type mailings. And I can't tell you what the court will do with that, but we've asked for it to be issued immediately. And we've taken the measure. The judge we expect to be before, which is presiding Yavapai County Superior Court Judge David Mackey, is out of town today, but we made arrangements to send him the lawsuit papers, care of his judicial assistant, and she will be forwarding them to him and has probably already done so today. So we're doing everything we can to rush to protect. We represent Mary Beth Hrin. That's the person we're trying to protect, but secondarily, we want to protect the city of Prescott's right to have a free and fair election that's not corrupted by this kind of trash.
Do you also want to send a message to various potential dark money organizations, not just in this election, but throughout the state?
Let me just say, I appeal to the legislature, of which we have Representative Noel Campbell and Representative David Stringer here, that it's going to take legislation to deal with that. Current Arizona law generally doesn't give you good protection in this forum, in the political forum, for dark money. We believe this case, because it is targeted an individual and we get to go after the people who've caused the harm as a basic common law right, that's a little bit of a different situation. But dark money in politics, the US Supreme Court has said it's legal.
Could you just talk a little more about what you said, the damages will be related to the outcome of the election?
Okay, just to be blunt, but not to say too much, if Mary Beth Hrin is successful in the election, her damages would be less. And if she's unsuccessful in the election, common sense tells me that her damages should be more.
That's right.
And would she have to prove that she lost the election specifically because of this campaign that was run against her?
Do you think that's possible? You think even if we quizzed every voter on their way into the voter's booth, that's just not possible. Any other questions?
I'd like to make a comment about that. I'm Joel Shockett, now campaign coordinator.
I should have introduced you.
That's okay. I'm an attorney, but I am not admitted in Arizona, but during the time I worked in New York, I did work in the area of defamation. The libelous documents that were sent out on its face accuse Mary Beth of wrongdoing, of essentially embezzlement. Plus, there is no question that Max Foss knew that these statements were false. Together, that would constitute libel per se, not just in New York, but in Arizona as well. And generally, if it's libel per se, you do not even have to show special damages. In other words, damages that did result from the action. And I'd like to leave with just 3 other points. You can look at this as someone or some entity put out a contract to hurt Mary Beth, destroy Mary Beth, and Matt Foss, who is a political consultant, a political hitman, if you were, took it up and completed the job, and Max Foss, his accomplices who aided and abetted this, will be found to be guilty of libel. And the last two things are expressions. The first one is an expression in the law. Who benefits? And the last one is, what are they afraid of?
Yeah. They're afraid of having a strong female governor, or mayor. That's what, I'm thinking ahead, Mary Beth.
One step at a time.
That's really what they're afraid of, having a strong female mayor in this city.
It is conservative.
Yeah. Who's gonna fuck around?
Thank you.
Okay, folks, if there's no more questions, then thank you for coming. If anyone feels the need to get a copy of the flyers, especially if you're in the media, come talk to us. We have some.
She's going to lose it.